If you're ever lost in the wild and you need food, that's the bird you need to find. Meet the honey guide. You can only find them in certain parts of Africa. And as you can probably guess by its name, the honey guide will literally guide you to honey. Like, you can actually talk and communicate with these birds to show you where the beehives are. But it's not even just humans. They'll lead badgers to honey, other birds to honey. However, when they lead you to honey, they're doing it for a reason. They're basically the honey mafia. They want their cut too. The honey guide's main food source is honey, beeswax, and bee larvae. But they can't get it themselves because the bees will tear them up. So they just get you to do it for them. And they expect you to share it with them. And according to the locals, if you don't share your honey with the honey guide, the next time they're not going to lead you to honey. They're going to lead you somewhere dangerous, like to a predator or a venomous snake. They will literally lead you to your doom if you don't share with them. Talk about teaching manners. In other words, tip your honey guide. The bearded vulture is literally built different. It's also known as the bone eater, and that's because 90% of this bird's diet is literally just bones. They have one of, if not the strongest digestive system of any animal, which is what makes this possible. And since all they eat is bones, what they do is they fly up and they get an aerial view of all the prey and the predators in their area. And then they lead the predators to the prey so that the predators can eat and they get the scraps. Talk about an evil genius. But that's not even the craziest part. Get this, if the vulture can't find any bones, what they'll do is they'll go find an animal hanging out on a mountain or a cliff. And then it'll quietly sneak up and jump scare the animal, making it fall to its demise. And then the vulture has bones. It literally scares the animal to death. They even practice making themselves look scarier for this tactic. They take the saying, work smart, not hard, to a whole new level. Moral of the story, if you're a really jumpy person, maybe don't go to the mountains where these vultures are.
They see me rolling, they hate it.
To get to the other side. Just kidding. Allow me to explain. Those were climbing perch. It's a little fish that's found in parts of Asia. Another name for them is the walking fish, and that's why. Basically, these fish have a special organ in their head called a labyrinth organ. And this organ pulls oxygen out of the air and inserts it into their blood. In other words, they can literally breathe like us. Like I'm saying, they could live outside the water for a week. They could go on a whole land vacation. Not to mention, they have really hard spiky fins that act like good feet. So the fish are able to just walk. They're evolving. We're going to be living with fish soon. Moral of the story, if you ever see fish walking down the street, it's normal. So a lot of the comments were geared towards the fact that the lions let the rhinos slide, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Allow me to explain. This specific type of rhino is a white rhino, and they get up to 6,000 pounds. Do you understand how big that is? If you took elephants out of the picture, that would make them the largest land animal in the world. Not to mention, they have extremely thick skin. They're pretty much an armored tank. And obviously, we can't forget about the sword they have coming out of their face. That horn can get over a foot long. Mix that all together with a really bad attitude and you got yourself a big old problem. Like, once they get mad, there is no stopping them. Just look at this video. That is a whole car. Moral of the story, the lions only had two options in this situation. Survive or don't survive. Just the existence of that thing makes me so happy I'm not a fish. Meet the hairy frogfish, also known as the perfect predator. They're found off the coast of just about every part of the world, which is bad for the fish because this thing is a problem. First off, they look like a plant, and they just sit at the bottom of the ocean with the other plants. You can't even tell it's a fish. That's already unfair, but it gets unfairer, more unfair. They have this extra spine attached to the top of their head, and attached to that spine is a fake worm, and they could just hang it out there and wiggle it around. They have built-in bait, and once a fish tries to take that bait, well, they become dinner. And fast, too. 1/6000th of a second. That's how fast they strike. That's 600 times faster than we blink. So they're invisible, they have a built-in lure, and they have a lightning-fast strike speed. It's hard out here for a fish. Moral of the story, if you're ever having a bad day, just remember, you could be a fish dealing with this guy.
Are you mooing because you want to be one with the cows?
Allow me to explain. On top of being a 600-pound carnivore with razor-sharp claws and a 1,000-pound bite force, tigers also have a special ability. They've learned to mimic the sounds of animals in their environment, and they do this to make hunting easier. As if they need that. Basically, what they do is they'll mimic the sound of, say, a monkey. That causes the other monkeys to come and investigate, and they end up walking right into a trap. Can you imagine hearing a person yelling and then running outside just to find out that you got finessed by a 600-pound cat? I don't like it. But to make it even better, tigers also know when breeding season is for some animals. And they'll mimic the sounds of those animals looking for a mate. It's breeding season, so a mate is gonna show up and the tiger's just gonna be sitting there like, gotcha. In other words, tigers learned how to make their food come to them. Dirty game. Am I crazy? Or did that bird just figure out the infinite food glitch? Meet the green heron. They're found everywhere from North America all the way to South America. And as you saw in the opening clip, they've learned how to fish. And not just learned how to catch fish. No, they learned how to use bait. Like they know what the fish enjoy. They'll use insects, worms, food that humans give them like bread, and they just drop it in the water and wait. Like us. And as the fish come and try to take the bait, the green herons just snatching them. They could catch 10 to 20 fish with one bait. Have you ever caught 20 fish off one worm? Didn't think so. But that's not even the coolest part. Get this. Sometimes when they're really hungry, they'll use bait to catch fish. And then they'll use those fish as bait to catch bigger fish. I'm never fishing again. I'm getting outperformed by a bird. Moral of the story, if you ever need fishing lessons, I'm not your guy, but I know a bird that can teach you. Now that jaguars are back in the United States, there's some things you should know. First off, they could run 50 miles an hour, making them the second fastest cat behind cheetahs. But they also weigh up to 250 pounds, making them the third largest cat in the world as well. And that's only behind the king of the jungle and a lion. On top of that, they're also excellent jumpers and climbers and swimmers. Like they hunt alligators in water. They also hunt bears and anacondas and porcupines. How do you hunt a porcupine? To make it even worse, you'll never see the jaguar coming. Like if you can't spot the jaguar in this picture, you'd be dinner. But that's not even the best part. They don't even hunt like a normal cat. When most cats are hunting, they go for the throat. But not the jaguar. They have the strongest bite force of any cat in the world. And they use that bite force to bite a hole in the skull every single time. It's their signature kill shot. Moral of the story, jaguars are quite literally built different.
Getting nowhere here.
If you enjoy life, those are the bees you stay away from. Meet the Africanized honeybee, also known as the killer bee. They're found all over Africa and in southern United States, just so you know. If I gotta know that, so do you. They're literally the most dangerous and most aggressive bee in the whole world. Like, they will swarm and attack for absolutely no reason. Even if you run, they're known to chase people for up to a mile. Not to mention, they're the only bee known to attack with their entire colony, which could be around 100,000 bees. By the way, it only takes about 500 stings to take out a human. New fear unlocked? Check. But the worst part about this whole thing is these bees are not even natural. They were created by a scientist in the 1950s by breeding two bees. And then he realized that he accidentally made them too aggressive. And then accidentally released them into the wild. I don't like that guy. Moral of the story, if you already don't like bees, you definitely don't want to run into these bees. So if killer bees were made in a lab, why are they called Africanized bees? That's a good question. Basically, in the 1950s, people realized that European honeybees produce more honey than any other bee in the world. They also realized that African honeybees can handle more heat than any other bee. At that point, some mad scientist comes along with his genius idea. What if we breed these two bees together and we make a bee that can produce a lot of honey and handle a lot of heat? So that's what they did, and they ended up making the Africanized honeybee, also known as the killer bee. In other words, it's an Africanized version of a European bee. That's where it gets its name. However, they quickly realized that this bee was way more aggressive than normal, and they were like, this ain't good. But it was cool. They were contained because they had the queens contained. Until some rookie on the job decided to release the queens, 26 of them. And then they all took off in 26 different swarms. And now, 70 years later, we still have killer bees, and they ain't going nowhere. They're actually spreading. I mean, we have them in the US now. That's fun.